All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Cody Giblett, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. The title of today's presentation is Implement AI in Your Business from AI Overwhelm to Action. And I'd like to introduce the presenter of today's webinar, Matthew Krieger, the SCORE National AI Committee Practice Lead. Matt?
Hi, everybody. So welcome to today's webinar. As Cody said, I'm a SCORE volunteer. I also run a manufacturing business during the day, and I'm very heavily involved in that and other AI initiatives. So that being said, the goal of today's webinar is really get you on a path to action within your business in terms of how to think about AI and implement it in the right ways. We're trying to get you unstuck if you're feeling stuck. We're trying to get you more sure if you're feeling unsure. We're trying to give you a direction if you are feeling directionless. And as part of that process, we'll be carrying an example through the webinar, which helps develop the practice of what we're trying to do here. And at the end, we're going to set you off on your own. We're trying to really be actionable and not theoretical, but it's not so specific that there's a recipe for what you're going to do. It's different for every business. We're trying to give you a set of principles and some disciplines and a framework for thinking about this process. Everything we do here today and everything you'll hear out of my mouth, hopefully, is really going to be business first thinking. So rather than saying what AI tools and technologies do we want to use, we're going to shift that thinking and say, where do I get leverage? And you're going to get the best leverage where you have opportunity or you have friction or you have bottlenecks. So the focus is the opportunity and the outcome, not the AI. And when I work with small businesses, I see this symptom a lot. People say, what are the tools I should use? And I'm going to suggest we invert the question and say, where is the opportunity? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about identifying the opportunities in your business for AI use. So the first thing that I advise any business owner to do, or anybody managing a business, and Cody, I realized I'm making the mistake of not using the next button. So I think that I got out of sync with my slides. So I apologize. Let me just recap where we were, because I think I misused the presenter controls. So we're going to follow a structured process here, and we're going to follow an example through to get you to action. This is where we talked about inverting the question. Now we're going to start with identifying the opportunity. Okay. One of the things I advise any small business client or any client of any size to do before thinking about AI implementation or any technology implementation is to take an inventory of your business processes. Only once you have an understanding of what you do can you bring technology into the mix. What is a business process? It's your ordering process, your time tracking process, your payment process, your inventory management, proposal creation, customer support, marketing campaigns, receipt handling, you name it. Every one of these things is a business process. And forgetting about technology for a minute, good businesses are built on top of simple, well-defined business processes. So one of the first actions that I'm going to suggest you take is to document what those business processes are. You're probably doing a lot more than you think, but you're not thinking about it as a business process. We're going to get into that a little bit later. One of the good ways to, at a high level, think of the business processes that are most ripe for AI disruption are to think about where you're spending a lot of time and where you're having friction. And if you ask this question, I think you'll have some very interesting results. If you're spending time on activities as opposed to creating results, these are activities that are ripe for automation in general and perhaps for AI. Okay, so with the inventory of your business processes in place across your functions, sales, marketing, advertising, and if you're new, if you haven't really started your business yet, you should be thinking in these categories. You're going to want to start thinking about those opportunities that can have a benefit from AI. So the areas that you're going to focus on first are the ones with the business processes that you understand the most. If you are having to track timesheets for individuals and you have a good process for understanding the format of the timesheet, who submits them, what they submit them with, where they go after that, and how that data gets into the system. If you understand that process, but you're finding that it is slow and manual intensive, that's a really good type of opportunity to focus on for some sort of technology automation or AI. If you have a process that has lots of repetition, takes a lot of cognitive load, high friction, these are good candidates. Also, we're trying to reduce friction and have you do more. Another kind of AI specific attribute of a process that would be a good candidate is if you have unstructured text and data. You've no doubt seen that AI's ability to read content, listen to audio, interpret video, interpret images. These are things that until very recently only humans could do. These are great opportunities for AI to aid in giving you greater productivity. So anything that has a clearly identifiable success criteria and impact of a business process is a good candidate. If you have a business process that is not stable, highly changing, full of exceptions, for example, in my business, which is a manufacturing company, we make custom industrial machinery. That proposal process and that bidding process that we do is anything but standard and anything but stable. It's lots of technical conversations, sales conversations, um, uh, presentation of concepts, and speaking to different people, education during that process. It's anything but a clean process. It's a very human and cognitive intensive process. That's not a good candidate because it's not stable. It has uncertain inputs and outputs. And as a result, I wouldn't consider that to be a good opportunity. You're going to want to avoid things that are a one off. You don't need to automate something that only happens once, or things that require so much setup and so much overhead and so much preparation that you'll spend more time on that than on the actual benefit. As I said a moment ago, you don't want to focus on things that are not broke, on things that are broken. You want to make them work manually and then return to focusing them. Lots of talk today about trusting AI and AI judgment versus your judgment. If you have a process that's heavy in judgment and judgment that has to be right, it may be something to keep away from AI. Fundamentally, you want to focus initially on things that don't create heavy business risk for probably obvious reasons. When you're looking at your business processes and you are considering opportunities for either automation or AI implementation, you should think to yourself, what is really the bottleneck? Is the bottleneck a business change? Is it a change in my behavior? Is it a change in my process? Or is a technology implementation really what's warranted here? As small business people, we often get enamored with the technology and we apply it where it doesn't need to be applied. So this gets back to business first thinking, focusing on the process first, bringing in the tech after. Then we want to say, what kind of technology does this need? Is it AI or is it some other automation? The point of this webinar is not to say AI is your hammer and therefore everything else is a nail. We still want to be critical about when and how we use the technology. So when you're thinking about your business, I really encourage you, don't think about what's the AI opportunity, think what's the business opportunity, and then examine what are the best solutions for that. So we're going to go through 3 examples here just to demonstrate what might be good candidate opportunities and poor candidate opportunities. So in this example, we get customer inquiries and we want to automate the response process. That is, we want to customize some email response and send it. So what are the attributes of this thing? Well, these things take a lot of time. They are repetitive, human heavy work. It requires a lot of input. It's a lot of copy and paste of the same thing. Opportunity for error. The inputs and outputs are clear. The input is an email comes in, and the output is a custom response that addresses the input. This scenario seems relatively simple. It's low risk. We can understand the process. We can clearly articulate the process. I would argue this is a good candidate for AI. Let's look at another example. You have receipts from travel or other purchases, and you need to categorize them. You have high volume, high work effort. Somebody hands you a receipt, it gets keyed in, you have to read it, the paper's always crinkly, the letters wear off, so it's a high work effort opportunity. It takes a lot of time, it doesn't produce any revenue, it's just work. Again, the inputs are clear, which is the receipt. The outputs are clear. You need the who, the when, the what, and how much money. And again, low risk, high reward. What's the big risk? The big risk is you slow yourself down a little bit until you fix it. Again, the process is well understood. It's a good candidate. Let's look at a bad example. Automation of social media posts. Now, before I explain this, some people would say, wait a minute, I see social media people telling me all the time how they should automate their AI. Well, that may be true, but we are looking for our first opportunity to dip our toes in the water here. And I'm going to argue that this type of automation is not a great first opportunity. It's time consuming. It's heavy on the creative side. You have to think about tone. You have to think about ideas. The outputs are so many platforms, so many formats. The process varies for all of them. It's all customer facing, brand impacting. It's not a great first candidate for AI, in my opinion. A good way, a good filter for thinking about AI use and what processes are candidates are, again, if it's messy work, if it's repeatable, if it's time consuming and is clearly understood and explainable, it's a good fit. So your first action item here, or really your second action item after taking the inventory of your business processes, is identify 3 to 5 opportunities in your business that you think could benefit from AI and keep them in mind. Now we're going to move on and we're going to talk about, you found 3 to 5 activities. How do I prioritize them in terms of my efforts? So where do you want to start? You want the biggest bang for your buck. You want to save money, you want to reduce pain, you want to increase your available time, you want to drive more revenue, right? Obviously, those are always the goals. But you also want to do so in a risk managed way. You don't want to start with your most critical process first. You don't want to start with your social media and your brand management first. You want to start with something that is tolerant of risk. You also want to start with things that are easier rather than harder. You're not only learning how to identify these processes, you're kind of learning about how AI fits in your business. That requires a more cautious approach. You may or may not be tech savvy. If you're not tech savvy, I think it urges even more caution. And so again, you want things that are high bang for the buck with reduced minimal friction and things that are well understood. So when we take a look, actually, I continue on. So you also want clarity. You want clarity on what you're going to get. So not just it makes me faster, but how much faster does it make me? How much money does it save me? You need to know that because there's going to be a cost to do this thing. Okay, so you want clarity about what the end state really looks like for you. And everybody will determine what their end state looks like. Many people will say that learning is by far the most important outcome of your first couple of times that you dip your toe in the water. And I would argue that's very accurate, as well. You're going to do high impact, low risk things that you're going to learn from, and then you're going to iterate. Excuse me one second. Okay. So you've now determined what's viable, and you're going to pick where you're going to start. So we showed 3 opportunities before. We said one of them was no good. The other 2, I think, were toss-ups, but something that I think matters to every business is this idea of making a custom response to customer emails or customer forms. It's a good candidate, again, for the reasons that we show here. Your action item is to find that opportunity for your business. Now we're going to see how ready you are. And readiness is important for any change because if you do something that you're not ready for, you're going to stumble and you're going to break more things. Not to mention, AI changes so quickly that you want to minimize your you want to minimize the number of moving parts. You don't want to be moving a process that is not stable into an AI that is also constantly moving. You want to have the time, you want to have the focus, you want to have the money, you want to have the commitment. These are all things that are necessary to be ready and to be successful. So the question to you is, while you're running your business, do you have the time to experiment? Do you have the patience? Can you implement the process end to end? Some of these questions may seem obvious, but it never shocks me how many individuals, whether in their personal life or in their business life or whatever, they get excited, they think about the technology, they think about the end state, and they don't pause to say, am I ready? And again, readiness uh, is really exercising a muscle. It's about testing your hypothesis. It's about making sure that you're ready to go, making sure that you understand the commitment, the costs, and at the end of the day, you're trying to learn something. So are you ready to learn, and are you ready to take that leap? The way that I look at this also, the way that I sort of frame this is that um, y- y- you're not trying to re-engineer your entire business. You're not trying to fundamentally rebuild all your business processes. What you're trying to do again is minimally say, do I have an opportunity in my business that a very transformational technology can solve? And if so, how do I get into that? And I would argue that your first entree into that should be viewed sort of like as a prototype of a new product. You don't have to go from zero to production right away. You're introducing a product, you're learning, you're iterating, and you're trying it again. So I think look at these implementations as prototypes, and I think it's a good approach. So, a couple more things about what ready really means, right? Again, you understand the process. You understand the inputs and outputs. You know what the impact is. You know how you're going to judge it. You know what the risks are, and you know how much time it's going to take. Okay. What it also means is that, excuse me, one moment again. It also means that you have the time, you have the focus, you have the commitment. Any project that involves business process change or technology introduction has the possibility to snowball and go off the rails. We're trying here to get you prepared so that doesn't happen. Okay. You need to be able to say, do I get my head around this whole thing? And can I accomplish it? And am I going to learn? I always come back to learning. It's going to be a fundamental principle here. Okay. We look at the process that we've identified, which was this customer email automated response. We understand it. It's good. We understand the inputs and outputs. Everything's clear. We're ready to go. Trivial example on purpose because I really want to start simple, but you're going to do this in your business for your business process as well. So you're going to assess your readiness for, one or more of your opportunities. Okay. We're going to talk about implementation here. Now, here's where the rubber hits the road. We're going to start to be able to do something. Business processes are essentially workflows. Workflows have inputs, they have outputs, and they can go in different directions. A business process represented as a workflow looks like a flowchart. The best business processes are the ones that can be broken down into workflows as simple as possible. When you think about the business processes, the opportunities that you're going to initially address, the process of drawing a workflow on paper, drawing the inputs, drawing what happens to them, drawing the outputs, is a really, really good exercise. It forces you to be able to articulate the process. If you can't articulate the process cleanly, you probably shouldn't be touching it. It's too complicated. You have to fix it first. It forces you to understand what the variables are in and out. It forces you to know where the exceptions are. If you have too many exceptions, maybe it's not a good process right now. All of this prep work ultimately aids you when you're going to make a change to a process or a technical implementation. Processes shouldn't just be thought about or talked about. They should be put on paper and understood, particularly if you're not working alone. We're going to take the example that we chose, which is the customer email response process. I'm showing here something a little bit more complicated than the example we picked because I'm showing options. But right here, you get a customer email in. So we have inputs and we have outputs in this workflow diagram. The black box is the AI. It's where something happens. So a customer email comes in. What are we going to use our AI for? We're going to figure out what type of email it is. If it's a sales inquiry, we're going to respond with sales data. If it's a technical question, we're going to provide answers to that question. Maybe it's a survey, we're going to parse those results. If the customer is upset or angry or frustrated or happy, we maybe want to know that. And those are all really good functions for AI for the reasons we talked about before. So we have an input coming in, we have what happens in the magic black box of AI, and we have outputs. We get the customer name, we get their question, we get whatever their product inquiry is, we get a sense of their sentiment. And then following that, we do something. We send them an email, we do some other action. This is a very, very basic workflow mapping of a process. And you would be surprised, but in any business, even of minimal complexity, you will have a lot of these types of workflows. And this is an oversimplified representation. Not every workflow is one input and one output. Workflows can look like very complex flowcharts. This is a simple example today, and we'll build on them later. So what you're going to do here is you're going to diagram your workflow. You've picked what your opportunities were. You chose one opportunity. And now you're going to map that workflow. You're going to draw it on paper. Now we're going to talk a little bit about actually materializing the solution. So these are 4 categories that I put together of how you might introduce a technology solution or an AI solution into your business in increasing level of complexity. And the next slide will articulate what these mean. So manual with AI assist simply means if you have a customer email process, as we're talking about, that we want to create a custom response for, it is a perfectly reasonable solution to walk before you run, where you have an AI process that you manually copy and paste into an AI, ask the AI your question, and copy and paste the email out into something and send it. It is a way of dipping your toes in the water. It's not requiring you to do full automation in the beginning. It's not requiring you to focus on tools. Again, you're focusing on process, not tools, right? The con of this approach is it by definition lacks full automation, but that's okay. You can do that later. So the reason I put the manual process in green is, in my opinion, it is where most of you will likely start, and maybe where a lot of you end up for some time. There is nothing to apologize for having your, again, expense receipt process, which was fully manual, to now partially automated. Still manual, you still scan the receipt, you take a photo, but now the AI does the magic work, and now you feed into a system. There's still humans involved, but you've knocked off an activity which is a good chunk of time. Absolutely no concern doing that. And it's completely a valid step forward in terms of advancing your business's maturity in AI. So then the other option, use some existing software. So today, if you use various bookkeeping and accounting software, some of that may have the functionality that you need built in. Or if you're using an existing CRM, a customer relationship management system, that CRM may have the ability to actually implement out of the box this example of getting a customer email, analyzing the email, and outputting a response. That's a great opportunity also. The question is, do you have that software? So that's sort of a little more work, a little more risk, a little more of a mature solution. Next thing, buy or license a tool that's purpose built to the task. So you can buy a purpose-built solution that does one thing well, that takes in an email and makes a customized response or does receipt tracking. That's also a viable option. You'll pay for that. There's going to be some complexity, but it's going to do one thing really well. And then finally, at the most complex end of the spectrum is you're doing something custom. You're building it yourself. Somebody else is building it for you. You're getting the benefit of getting exactly what you want. It's fully integrated, but you have a time and a complexity challenge there. And my guess is that most of SCOR's clients, most businesses who are small, are probably not going to go that route. You're likely to go the green and maybe the next two, but custom projects are often very dangerous, and we're going to talk about that right now. I want to do a couple of side notes about these. So, custom projects, they always sound great. You say, I'm going to get exactly what I want. It's going to be totally custom to me, and it's going to work. Well, that's always the goal, but you better go in eyes wide open. Projects can run away, costs can go out of control. You have to think about long-term maintenance. Your business is going to change. Is the custom solution going to change with you? Just important to think about these things. There is nothing wrong with custom solutions as long as you are prepared to own them and manage them and be aware of what some of the snags are. I want to do another little sidebar here. If you're thinking about outsourcing any of the type of work that we're talking about today to contractors, just want you to be very careful. There's a lot of good contractors out there. There's a lot of bad contractors out there. What's most important is that when you outsource something, that you do it in an educated way. One of the failures I see all the time is small business people outsource a technical job. They don't have the skills themselves to understand it, and therefore they can't manage the contractor. That is a very difficult challenge, and it makes the costs skyrocket. And as I said before, when it's like building a home. If you don't have a clear sense of what you want exactly, then the project can run away in time and cost, especially if you're not experienced in that. And finally, be aware, if you follow any social media at all or YouTube, like everybody's an AI consultant today. I mean, everybody calls themselves an AI consultant. Just be careful of that. Make sure that you trust the person you're dealing with. And I want to have one more side note before we go on. I bring up these side notes because while they are side notes, they are inevitably questions I get almost every time as I talk about what I'm talking about today. You may have heard of vibe coding. So vibe coding is this idea that you can, rather than programming software using a programming language, you tell the AI what you want. You say, I want a web application that tracks my receipts. I want a mobile app that allows users to take selfies and put funny filters on them. It is sort of an enormously powerful proposition because for the first time, you're just expressing to the AI what your intent is. You're telling it what you want as opposed to telling it how to do it. You don't need to be a programmer. You say what you want, the tool spits out software. It's very alluring because you can prototype fast, you get rapid feedback, you test your iteration cycle. And for non-technical people, this is an enormous win because it gives you low barrier to entry and it encourages you to explore and experiment. Be aware, though, that at the end of the day, you can create really fragile software that seems like it works for a couple of use cases and then completely breaks when you go to use it. And engineers are still required to build things that work. If I could type into an AI that I would like a building built or a bridge built, maybe I could get that, but I don't know if you would trust it. Engineering discipline certifications, security testing, all these things still matter. So just because you have the perception that you can make something doesn't mean you should. That being said, I do believe people should educate themselves. And I believe that if you are tech forward in your thinking and you have a tolerance for technology moving fast, excuse me, experimenting with some of these tools can actually be a lot of fun and can make prototypes. You just have to be aware. When you look online, you're going to see lots of people hyping these technologies and lots of people poo-pooing these technologies. I'm here just to give you a balanced, approach for thinking about that. Okay, let's move back to the core content. So these are a couple of biases that I have when thinking about how to do an implementation of anything, of any technology. I do, in general, prefer to use something that works over building something new. So I said buy versus build, but maybe it's reuse versus recreate is a better way to say it. In general, I recommend people resist the urge to say that they are unique and that they must customize the software process to their business or the AI process to their business. It is far better to, if you can, adjust your process to the software, because the software has baked into it years and years of business process that works. And finally, I recommend that you keep things simple and don't do more than necessary. When technology gives you the ability to do things quickly, you start adding on. I'll just do one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And I urge you to resist that. So this is a visual summary of the implementation approaches I gave before. Using existing software or running things semi-manually is a low risk, low complexity approach. Buying or licensing a purpose-built tool is a little more complex, a little more costly, but gets you a little further perhaps. And then on the higher risk end of things, as we talked about vibe coding and we talked about contracting software. So this is a general, overview of those approaches. What you're going to do in your business now is you're going to take the process or processes that you've chosen to focus on, and you're going to figure out how you're going to implement them. You're going to choose your approach. And as I said, I think most people should dip their toes in the water by doing the manual AI assisted approach. That is, there's some manual, there's some AI, and you get the result out. Start small. You don't have to automate everything from the beginning. The first iteration of anything you do, I will keep beating this horn, should be the most minimal thing it can be, the most uncustomized thing it can be, the least automated thing it can be, but the most real thing it can be. You're trying not to change a lot of variables at once. You just want to mimic the business process and see where AI or other technology can help. And you do that not by changing 5 things at once, but by fixing variables, as they say in mathematics, and experimenting just where it matters. So we're going to do a workflow example here. I'm describing further like what a manually assisted AI workflow would look like. And this gets back again to this idea of a customer inquiry response automation. So how might that workflow look if you're doing a manual/AI approach? You're going to take an actual customer email. You're going to paste it into your AI of choice. You're going to prompt the AI to draft you a response. You're going to keep iterating until that response is good. And then you're going to send the response. What do we get out of this? Well, this box in the middle, which I can't draw on the screen, but this request a draft reply based on subject matter and provided company product list, that's your AI box. So that's really what you're testing. You're testing, does AI enhance this process? And that's what the workflow is going to look like. So we're going to give you a slightly more tangible example. So I'm the customer here, and I sent an email. I'd like information on this project or product. I heard such good things about you. Thank you. Thank you. So what I've done here is I've created a prompt. I've gotten an email, I've created a prompt, and I told the AI, and it doesn't matter which AI you want to use. Here's an email from my customer. I want you to make a custom response. If it's about a product, I want you to refer to the product and send a link and pricing. And I want you to adjust the tone of the email according to whether the user is happy or mad. Okay. And I give a format and I paste in that email. And here's what it looks like. I did it in Claude. So here's the prompt. I pasted in the email to Claude along with my prompt. Said, "Dear Matthew, thank you for your inquiry regarding the widget. Please see, here's a link to the product page for the widget info. Here's the pricing as I asked for, and I appreciate your interest, exclamation mark." So you can see it did what I wanted. It addressed the first name. It identified the product in the widget 3000. It sent a link as I asked. It gave the pricing as I asked, and it did so in an enthusiastic tone because the requester you saw said, "I heard very good things about your company." So the AI knew that they were happy, and they get that response. And as part of this manual dipping your toe in the water approach, you can take that email, copy and paste it, and send it. And you've learned something here. A very basic example, but it's a way that I would advise that you take your first shot at implementing AI in your business. So your action is you're going to do that workflow. You're going to pick your process. You're going to map the workflow. You're going to run the workflow. And that's what I'm giving to you to do next. So now you've put a given workflow into some process, which we've, sort of manually assisted here. And we want to say, okay, what happened? Did it work? Did it not work? How did we come out? So very simple. We had our current workflow, which was all the basic steps. And now we have this AI-driven workflow. So we want you to answer some pretty basic questions. Did it get you where you needed to be? Right? Did it enable some new thing? Did it actually save my time as I expected? Did I save the money I expected? Is the quality of the response better? Is it more reliable? Is there less human need, right? You're going to ask some obvious questions, but putting them on paper makes you disciplined, to follow them. Fundamentally, did it improve your outcome? And if it did, then for this given workflow, you're going to consider going to the next step, which is going to be full automation. I do want to reiterate something, as I said before. Your workflows are likely more complicated than just input AI output or input processing output, right? If everything in life was so simple, there'd be no complexity running a business. Business processes are complex. The guidance I'm giving you here today is to chunk those big processes down into manageable bits and string them together for the result. You don't start with a business process big and work small. You start small and work big. So when I gave you the action before to identify and map your business process workflows, I don't expect you to have these very simple in process out workflow. They're going to be big and they're going to be complicated. But your job is going to be to chunk them into smaller pieces and glue those pieces together later. That's how you make real change. You boil a problem down into smaller and smaller pieces. It's like that question, how do you eat a sandwich? And the answer is one bite at a time. And that is how you're going to approach this implementation here. So we're evaluating the workflow that we just ran, the one that we did in Claude, right? It saved us time. It saved my brain some work. The email content was consistent. I didn't have spelling errors because I was retyping it every time. Do we know it's reliable yet? Well, we will after we test, but it's very high repeatability. So we got our results. Really, really important that when you test anything, right, that you make sure your results are repeatable across real data and real use cases. One of the problems people get into when they're implementing a new business process is that they don't think broadly enough about the exceptions, and the exceptions are what break things. So you want to consider the exceptions, you want to consider the repeatability, you want to consider, real data that comes in. And only by testing against real data and testing reliably will your use case be proven to work. Doing one small test with limited data doesn't prove it works. It just proves that you can go on to the next step. So you want to make sure that is the case. You want to make sure that things are stable, that the process is not constantly changing. That, again, that the process saves you time and money. If for whatever reason the little AI process you're putting in is very compute intensive and costly, well, you don't want to spend more automating it than you were doing it the manual way. So you want to think about that. So you want to think about time and cost every time you run. And you also want to know that you can handle exceptions, that you can catch mistakes, and that when things break, you know about them. So this is all about responsible, getting the disciplines to implement AI and other technology in your business. So you're going to do the evaluation, and you're going to say, okay, I'm good to go to the next step. A couple of additional notes here about warning signs. Once you've documented your workflows, implemented them with one of the approaches that we talked about. If it's cool, but you can't measure if it's doing the job, it's probably not worth doing. If you're constantly trying to, to tweak the solution, that's probably not good either. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're spending more time on exceptions than you are on the core process, you maybe want to make your process more stable first. Okay. Instability is a big issue here. You don't want to choose your tools before you prove the workflows. This is another thing of like, tools do not come first. Tools come last. And finally, you don't want to optimize too early. I have routinely dealt with clients and other people who say, I'm starting a website or I'm starting an app and it has to handle 10,000 people. I'm just making up an example. Say, why does it have to handle 10,000 people? Well, I plan to have 10,000 people at the end of a couple months. Say, like, it's probably too early to focus on that. It's going to cost you a lot of time. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Focus on getting your first 10 people before you build an app that handles 10,000 people, because you will spend 80% of the money trying to handle 9,980 of those people, where it's the top 20 that, initially you need to serve. So don't optimize before you have to. Recognize that no matter what you do, it's going to kind of feel messy. You're going to feel uncertain, right? It's not going to be perfect. One of the points of today is to give you confidence down a path, especially if you're a non technical individual. Be uncomfortable with the uncertainty. You're trying here, and in this webinar, the whole point of the webinar is to get you to action. So one of the reasons people either avoid action or don't stick with it is because they're uncertain and uneasy about they're just uncertain about the results, and they're not confident about the results. And I'm saying you should expect to be uncertain and not confident, but count on yourself to be able to move forward anyway. If you don't, your competition will. So Part of this is coaching to say, keep trying and don't give up. The point is you are trying to learn. If you get nothing else out of all this than to learn what some of your strength areas are and what the weaknesses are and where the opportunities are, even if you do nothing else, you will be a better business person. Because without the technology, even forgetting the technology, part of this analysis here is saying, are my business processes stable? And do my business processes work? That could be a whole webinar by itself. And maybe it should be. So if nothing else comes out of this other than a disciplined approach around your business processes, I think that'll be really helpful. The next step in this process is automation. We're just going to talk about this today. The point of this webinar is to get you to action, not to get you toward full automation. But I'm sure a lot of you were thinking, well, that's ultimately my goal. So talk to me about that. So that's where we are. So this is an example of the previous situation, except automated. So this is sort of a theoretical example here. There's automation platforms out there. One of them is called Zapier. One of them is called Make. The way they work is they have connectors to your systems. There's a Gmail connector. There's a connector to QuickBooks. There is a connector to ChatGPT. So you're going to connect the connectors that need connecting. You're going to define what they call triggers, which is what starts the process. Now, in our case here, the receiving of the email starts the process. So the trigger happens. When the trigger happens, the automation platform grabs the main input, which is the body of the email. It passes that body of the email with the prompt that you gave, with whatever other relevant information you need to provide into the AI. And with that prompt, you're telling it what result you want. The automation platform grabs the outputs from that AI and formats and sends the email all automatically. Think of automation platforms, and I regret now actually that I took out the demo slide of that. Think of automation platforms as a flow chart on paper that is live. It actually has the inputs, it actually has the outputs, and it actually has the boxes where stuff happens. And these automation platforms allow you to connect box to box and decide what to do. It's a more advanced topic. We're not going to get into it today, but I need to make you aware of what those are about. So I have a call to action for you. And I suggest that, the next hour you have to explore this, that you implement a basic AI workflow end to end. So if the customer email handling is your workflow, great. If the expense or receipt expense recognition process is your workflow, great. If you are a SCORE volunteer on the call and you ever collect paper surveys from workshops, maybe your workflow is analyzing that data with the AI. Whatever it is, determine a process or a task that could benefit from AI, map it on paper. Make sure it's simple. Map it on paper, run it manually like you ever did. No AI. Just run it the normal way and see how long it takes and see what a pain it is. Then run it with what I call the AI assist, which is like you got the email in, you're going to copy it and paste it manually into the AI. You're going to give it a prompt. You're going to get the output out and you're going to send it. See if that's better. Keep iterating with varying inputs. And once you get something stable, then connect the pieces together and go to a Zapier or go to a Make and automate that if it makes sense for you. And try to go in and look at other business processes and workflows and do the same. I will circle back to the goal today. The goal today was to target individuals who are interested in AI, but don't know what step to take, don't know where to start for their business, feel overwhelmed by the technology, and or lack a structured process for getting there. The point of this webinar was to help you get over that uncertainty, to give you a simple but structured approach, to help you think about how you can look at the implementation options, to help you execute on one of those implementation options, and then to help you iterate and learn. So I hope that this webinar accomplished that. And then Cody, I guess we're back over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, we have plenty of time. The webinar, we got 30 more minutes. So if you have questions, throw them in the chat. So, or not chat. Matthew, I told you not to say chat because we don't have a chat feature, and then I said chat. You have to put it in the Q&A window. There's not a chat feature on here, guys. So throw it in the Q&A window, and we'll begin asking the questions from the audience. I see, Monica, you just got here. You're confused the time zones. That's okay. I'm Central Time as well. You'll get the link to the replay in a post-event email. You'll be able to access that replay in the same place you came to access this live event in Score Academy. Let's see here. Consumer online. Increase the likelihood of increase. Okay, so all right. So GEO. The new big thing, given the significant increase in AI usage for consumers in online search, any recommendations or strategies for businesses here today to help their businesses get found in AI search?
To be honest, I'm not the best one to answer that question. It's a question that comes a lot, and I think it's out of the scope of today. I'm gonna punt on that one because I can't do it justice right now.
Yeah, I think it involves a lot of SEO stuff as well,
Yeah.
and which is a completely different realm. We do have a webinar on that. I think it's SEO, what's new in SEO in 2026, and I could put a link to that in the chat. Can I use AI to get new customers / more traffic on my website as a retailer? I'm sure there's some strategies. Any suggestions on that?
I mean, one of the things that I would answer is I would go back to, the premise of today's webinar is you have a set of business processes for um, acquiring customers. And I don't know what your business processes are for acquiring customers, and therefore I'm not going to give you a recommendation on how to use AI to do it. But what I will give you a recommendation to say is look at your business processes for customer acquisition, find where the friction is, find where you're taking time, find the opportunities that maybe you can't execute at all because you don't have a capability, and see if AI would help that situation, is what I would advise.
Let's see here. Um, So good question here. As a non-tech tech person, how do I mitigate risk of creating chaos when working with technical contractors?
One of the first things you should do is work with as few technical contractors as you can. Ask yourself why you're with those contractors and minimize why you're doing that, right? So the more minimal your interaction, um, the less risk you'll have, number one. Number two, make sure that you really, really, really define the scope and objectives and that you're aligned about what you're getting and when and how and for how much money. Um, make sure, if you can, that you have a buddy or a friend or a family member who is technical. Maybe they can help you. They could serve as an interface. This is one of the biggest pitfalls I see with small businesses. They work with contractors who are very technical. There's a mismatch. Everybody means well. I'm a technical person too. I'm glad that I can speak the language of business. But there are many technical people who have trouble with that. And there's many business people who have problem talking tech. This is a problem that has existed forever, and you need some guidance. You need, I think, an advisor or a friend or a family member who can help guide you there to stay away from the pitfalls. But short of that, minimizing your scope, really defining what they're going to do, what it's going to cost, making sure that you have the ownership that you need. All of those things are just good business practices.
Another good question here was, what is the most effective use case that businesses are implementing AI into their business? From this presentation, so far they've heard email handling is one of them.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the low-hanging fruit. Um, so customer response of any kind, whether it's a form or an email, automating responses is a good one. Um, Writing copy or creative for social media is another one. Um, Analyzing documents for meaning is another one. You have an existing document, you have to understand it, you need to summarize it, you need to pull out the salient information. It's a great use case. Uh, Doing analysis on spreadsheets and data. One of the wonderful things about AI, as I explained in the vibe coding section, is that AI lets you express your intent as a user. When you type a prompt into Gemini, you don't tell Gemini how to do what you're asking for. You tell it what you are asking for, and Gemini figures out how to do it. That's a big benefit because it lowers the barrier to entry. So when you want to analyze a spreadsheet that is complex or understand sales trends, rather than having to be in the weeds of the spreadsheet mechanics and the financial mechanics, you can express your intent to AI and ask it specific questions. Now, that doesn't mean you want to throw up your hands and say that you don't need to know spreadsheets or you don't need to understand basic finance. Of course, you're going to want to. But when you have a moderately complicated anything, the ability to go to AI and say, help me understand this thing or answer specific questions about this thing is an enormously powerful use case. Here's another use case that I think is very powerful. If you have any phone or voice communications or video conferences, with your customers or with your vendors, the ability to take those transcripts that all the web conferencing tools have and essentially search them for meaning is enormously powerful. Not just getting the transcript, but saying what was talked about that was important, what are my action steps. That's another good one too. Another opportunity, and then we'll move on to the next question, is customer support. Um, how many companies spend so much time answering the same question again and again and again and again? Well, one of the great areas where AI has showed a lot of promise is if you provide the AI with your literature, your documentation, your policies, whatever it is, and users can interact with that AI in the form of maybe a chatbot. Um, those answers can be surfaced without relying on a human. So that's a great AI use case too.
Yeah, another good question here. Somebody's asking, do you have any experience using AI to scale sales?
The the example I gave of I mean, selling means a lot of things, but so handling leads, for example, using AI can be um, can have a positive scaling effect because now you can handle funneling more qualified leads down the sales funnel more rapidly than you would if you had to put human beings on the process. So that's a way to scale sales. Um, Understanding your market by doing research on your customers and your competitors is something that the research functions of all the AI tools are very good at. That's a way for you to scale your sales. Um, the lead generation itself, which can be facilitated by relevant content marketing, which can be AI assisted, is another way to help scale sales.
All right, let's see here. So we went through that one, the GEO stuff. Let's see.
Okay, can I pick one?
Yes, go ahead.
So Amy asked, there are things I want to get AI help with because it's not my skill set. We've been predominantly business to consumer and would like to develop a sales process for B2B. None of us are naturally salespeople. Is it accurate to say you would suggest seeking a sales expert first before trying to automate? Well, I would suggest that before you try to automate, that you educate yourself. How you educate yourself is the question. There's AI to educate yourself. There's sales experts to educate yourself. There's courses to educate yourself. That's to me the key thing. It's far more important that you educate yourself somehow before going into the AI. When you go into an AI without the knowledge of the problem you're trying to solve, you can create a bigger mess. I saw a really good quote this morning, and it was something to the extent of, if you take people who really understand a business and then marry them or pair them with people who really understand the technology, that you can really have an impact, a powerful impact on that business. So if I look at this question, I say, if you don't understand AI and you don't understand sales, which is what you said here, that's a concern about moving forward at all. I would argue you should understand sales before you understand the AI. So I would say educate yourself somehow in the sales. If you want to talk to a sales expert, do so. But just like going to an attorney, the more you learn ahead of time, the least costly is going to be the attorney. Once you get that education you need, then you're at a point where you can say, okay, I'm ready to think about AI.
Yeah, another good question here was, what is the realistic timeline to go through all these steps that you've laid out? 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, my call to action here. I want you to be able to go through one simple workflow literally in the next hour. I think that's absolutely achievable. But then you say, okay, well, that's one simple workflow. I have 10 of them. Okay, that's 10 hours. Then you say, well, I want to pick one of those workflows and I want to go end to end. So that's a little more investment in time. I can't put a timeline on this except to say that you should start now and you can do simple stuff really, really quickly. The challenge, as I think I said before, is not the quick getting up and running. The challenge is making reliable, repetitive use of these changes in your business. And there's no way for me on the outside to, evaluate your ability to execute. I will say small companies can move pretty fast, and you've got that on your side if you're a small company.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention as well. Kind of the mind shift change here is the goal is not how much time it takes, but just ensuring that whatever AI you bring in, it's implemented correctly, and you're not wasting your time or money with a new tool, which is kind of what we've seen a lot with AI coming in. Let's see.
Cody, let me pick one more, if you don't
Go
mind.
ahead.
One of them said, Michael said, you've emphasized the mapping workflows and documenting the manual process as a prerequisite for effective execution. Is there a way to use AI to generate these standard operating procedures and workflow maps for us automatically. Seems like a logical starting point. Okay. I think what Michael's saying is you've got these business processes, but rather than manually going and documenting them, can I use AI to discover what they are or document new approaches? Maybe, but I would suggest you're putting the tool before the horse. um, I would suggest that as a business person, you document what your business processes are by yourself. I mean, you have to handwrite them, but certainly you should be able to document them. Once you understand what your business processes are, start to bring in the tools. But I wouldn't automate that with AI because it's a one-time process anyway. The process of discovering your processes doesn't typically repeat a lot. So it's not an answer where I would bring in a tool first.
Oh, sorry. Unmuted my camera there. Another good question here. Other than AI, are there other? Does this system also apply to other things such as like Zapier or other automated systems?
Cody, what is the question asking about the process in the webinar if it applies to other things aside from AI?
Yeah, something like other automated systems or automated systems that you might bring into your business that aren't technically AI, something like Zapier,
I
as
got
you
it.
said, make.com.
I got it. So one of the things I noticed as I was making the presentation um, is that the process recommendations that I'm making today are not inherently specific to AI, which is kind of, to me, like fundamental to the message here. We're doing a business thing in this webinar. The AI is one of the tools that we can use to do that business thing, right? This webinar is not called doing AI. It's like starting your action toward it. But the process is the business process. If this webinar, I could have given this webinar 20 years ago and said, thinking about the internet in your business. I could have given it 15 years ago and said, thinking about mobile devices in your business. I could have given it 10 years ago and said, thinking about cloud in your business. Now it's AI. But the business process principles, the best practices for workflows and thinking about your business and thinking about your business processes and keeping things simple, those are general concepts, with AI being kind of like very hot and very timely and very transformational. So the answer is, in my opinion, these principles are relevant for any sort of business process change or technology implementation.
Yeah, another good question, and I guess other than the obvious issue that we're solving for here, which is maybe implementing AI too fast without going through a proper process. What are the biggest mistakes or issues that you see businesses doing when it comes to bringing AI into their business or using AI in their business?
They they get too excited about the tool. Um, they focus on sort of the shiny object instead of the meaningful business outcome. Um, they don't do the legwork like we talked about today. Um, they sign up with a contractor too early and they put lots of money into something that becomes irrelevant in a week. Um, those are some of the biggest pitfalls.
So let's see here. I'm trying to look for questions that more about the process we're going over today. But here is a question just on AI in general. Can I use AI, or do you have experience using AI to analyze processing maps and provide enhancement recommendation or process maps? I'm not exactly sure what that is. Maybe you have experience with that term.
I mean, so I did a process map is a workflow, right? Like we talked about, a business process. Um, one of the things I love about AI is its ability to take a visual or graphical representation of something and explain it and break it down. So if you have an existing process map, whether it's drawn on a napkin or whatever the format is, I would encourage you to experiment, give it to the AI, say, uh, explain this process to me. Okay, so you get a response and you're going to know whether or not the AI accurately represented the process. And then you're going to say, maybe um, compare this business process to standard operating procedures for this type of business process in other industries. And it's going to say, well, you're missing this and this, or areas to improve might be this, or you've not considered that. If that's what you mean, I think that can be a pretty exciting, use case. And you're using kind of AI in the partner role of thinking about that.
I think that's also an important. You mentioned providing it with the prerequisite of details. I think people overestimate AI in a sense of it can be kind of your worst employee and best employee at the same time. If you don't give it enough information, it'll go off in a completely different direction. Versus it all depends on the detail that you're providing. Let's see here. So here's a good question. What are your experience with AI agents? And if you could explain that term for anybody that doesn't know what that is.
AI, so most of us today, when we use AI, we go to the Chat GPT app or the website, or we go to Gemini, or we go to Claude, and we type in a prompt and we get a response, and we type in another prompt and you get a response, and you have a conversation, right? But that conversation is only active while you're having it. So the idea of an AI agent is you give a task to AI, you give it an objective, book a flight. Okay. Um, the reason that traditionally booking flights is not automated but is done by humans is because this process is fraught with exceptions. You go to the website to book a flight, it shows you the options. Um, you want to check another airline, you have to go to another website. You go to the website's down. There's a phone number, you try to call the phone number. You try to book, you can't book because it doesn't take your points. It's a giant pain in the butt. Well, what if you had an AI that could sort of behave like a human? So rather than giving the AI step by step instructions, you give it the objective to book the flight, and the AI will go off and sort of figure out how to book the flight. If it hits a roadblock, it'll take a different branch. The agent has agency, which is why they're called agents. They are effectively not just pre-programmed steps, but the agent will try to accomplish a task end to end, working around the roadblocks it hits. You can play with this today if you download, if anybody's using Claude, it's one of the great AIs. You download Claude, uh, do it on your PC, or Mac. You get a big window. There is a function of Claude called Cowork, which essentially is an agent. You say to the Cowork agent, book me a flight, or um, um, do some research and consider this, this, and this, or grab data from this source, analyze it, and put it over here. You tell the agent to go, and you will watch the screen while this thing opens your browser, navigates to a site, tries to get the data, it doesn't work, goes a different direction. And as long as it takes to accomplish that process, that agent will work. We're just at the beginning of that, but things are improving very rapidly, and it's sort of cool to see. So that's an example of an agent system, Claude Cowork, and as you've no doubt heard on the news, it's agents everywhere.
Is there an example of that as far as like a case for businesses to use that in their business?
Um, there is, and the reason there is because again, your goal is to accomplish a task and to do it quicker and more cheaply. So if you can use an agent to accomplish a task, right? Why not? Um, I didn't bring up agents today because it brings more complexity to the discussion. But where we talked in the section of the uh, back here, we talked about automation and we talked about some of these workflow platforms like Zapier or Make. You can use an agent or a Claude Cowork to accomplish try to accomplish a same thing. So the answer is absolutely yes. Um, so while this presentation is not focused on the technology implementation itself, um, there are multiple ways to accomplish the end goal of that automation, and those agents are one of them. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Another good question. You mentioned starting low risk opportunities. What are some examples of low risk AI projects?
I mean, anything, for like anything that doesn't touch your customer is lower risk, right? Because you don't want to risk your brand or making a mistake. Um, Productivity things are good lower risk things. So, a process that is just like a lot of manual rote work, any process that's a lot of manual rote work could be a good um place to start because the worst that happens is, it gets even slower. Things that don't require access to confidential data, um, analyzing documents and spitting out transcripts is a low risk kind of approach. Analyzing your corporate documentation and creating um, FAQ articles, frequently asked questions, is generally a low hanging fruit. Of course, those touch customers, but not before you review them. So, those are some examples. But I think the way to look at it isn't to say what's a low risk use of the technology. It's you should say what are the low risk business processes that I have, and you're going to know those because you went and you did discovery on them.
Yeah, another good question is, I guess AI in general. They said they're a service based business and have trouble finding how this relates to their business when they attend AI educational content.
Oh, so the question is, I'm sorry, what was the question, Cody?
How can AI help if my business is a service based business? Usually, when they attend events,
Got it.
the focus is on, I guess, other things.
Right. So i- you have to do the legwork to the fact that your business is a services business is is not really important yet for AI or not. What's important is you're going to do an inventory of your business processes for that services business. And you're going to say, what are my business processes? Where do I have friction? And where am I going to get opportunity? And that's how you're going to start your journey, in my opinion. If somebody says to you, "Hey, you're a service business, and I have this hot AI tech for you to implement, and here's really great examples," like I would be more dubious of that approach. I think you have to do, excuse me, the legwork. That being said, the opportunities, one of the challenges with services business is they have trouble scaling. um, one person only has so many working hours a week, and if you want to do more than that, you need a second person. So one of the ways that you could use AI is to give you more time. Anything that lets you do more with less of your involvement is going to be a good candidate, especially for a service business.
Or another good question is, you talked about making sure you have a fully documented business processes. What if you don't have your business processes fully documented yet? Can I still start using AI?
Well, you better start. I'm certainly not suggesting you need to document every business process before you start. What I am saying is that you document the business process that you're going to focus the AI for. And documenting a business process, depending on how complex or simple it is, can be an hour of work. It could be 15 minutes of work. It could be an hour, or it could be a day. Pick a simple one and map it out and then get into the AI. But the key thing is, don't start with the AI, start with the business process. So document one, document a small one, make a workflow, map it out, and then go for your technology from there.